Thanks, Chair, and thanks everybody for their opening statements. It's been quite enlightening and quite informative in terms of, I suppose, this very complex debate. And I think drug use is a reality, and we're trying to grapple with this situation for the last 50 years in Ireland and elsewhere. How to look at different forms of stop criminalising people, because that hasn't worked and it's been counterproductive. So my main kind of question is around the opposition to a different model than we're talking about. And obviously the model that we're talking about here is decriminalisation, regulation and everything in between. Because at the end of the day, it's about saving lives and making things safer for those that want to use drugs. And even for those that do not use drugs in any capacity, this debate is really, really important for them. So it's a societal issue that we need to grapple with. So in terms of the opposition to changing course, because in this country the opposition, it comes in many forms, and it comes in the form of the status quo. I mean, is okay at this moment of time. That's what they will think, or even go kind of more draconian in terms of looking at a kind of more harsher penalties in terms of criminalisation. So, just to the three witnesses, where do they see the kind of the neo opposition to making things, to progressing this issue? Because I think the public, particularly in Ireland in the last 5-6 years, have moved beyond politicians, and they have, I think, conjured up to say, look, we've had 50 years of this, doesn't work, let's look at something different. And once you have to give people an alternative. And if you give people an alternative, it's a rational, a rational way of looking at things differently. I think people will listen, and people are listening. So, where do you see the opposition in terms of this issue in the next 5 to 10 years, in terms of across the world?
I've just written a book about this, so I'll start off.
You have to send me the book.
It's called Drug Policy Constellations, and it's about how a lot of the opposition to different ways of doing drug policy are based in traditionalist morality. And I suppose it's unsurprising that, given decades of people being told that these substances are dangerous and that they're evil and that they ruin communities, that people are fearful about different ways of doing things, especially if they think that that different way of doing things is going to expand the market and bring more people into these patterns of use. I don't think it's helpful to dismiss those fears, but we need to engage with them on the basis of, people are concerned about their children. They don't want their children taking substances that might kill them. That's absolutely fair enough. And so we need to think about, designing methods of decriminalising and regulating drugs that don't increase the risks to children. So far, the evidence suggests that decriminalisation does not increase the risks to children because it doesn't increase drug use. There are ways of doing legalisation, and there are companies out there waiting to pounce on such opportunities that would, predictably increase drug use amongst children. So, for example, if companies were allowed, as they have been in some states in the US, to sell fizzy drinks and sweets infused with cannabis, then one would expect the use of cannabis amongst young people to increase. And indeed, we've seen in some states an increase in emergency hospital admissions for children because they are taking what they think are sweets. So we need to be aware of the fact that people will be nervous about these. We need to address those honestly and openly. We also need to be aware that there will be people who are willing to distort the evidence in pursuit of maintaining the status quo. And here I'll give you the example of the use that's being made of evidence from Oregon, which decriminalised the possession of all drugs a couple of years ago. And that, since decriminalisation in Oregon, there has been an increase in drug-related deaths and crime in that state, and people are jumping on that to say, oh, look what happens when you decriminalise drugs, it's a disaster. people are completely ignoring when they make that point that there was also a pandemic which, dramatically reduced drug use, deaths and crime, and also that fentanyl has entered the market in Oregon, which would predictably increase drug-related deaths. And when you control for the timing of the pandemic and the entry of fentanyl into the market in Oregon, you don't see an increase in crime or deaths that can be attributed to the decriminalisation of drugs. Now, these are highly emotive and politicised debates. I think we need to try and engage with people openly, honestly, understand why people are concerned, and give them the information they need to be able to make their own decisions about what's best for our children and our society.
I think if you don't mind, if you can hear me, okay, actually.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm just going to come in here and talk about how I think it's we talk about the fear. So when it comes to children and drugs, like Alex just said, and discussing within these markets, within these models, that we've been discussing today, that we are also aware that we do not want to increase drug use amongst children, and that these reforms need to happen at the same time as the implementation, wide-scale implementation of drug education campaigns inside and outside of schools. And to just provide a little bit of data to this, there's in Stanford in the US, they conducted a study on the Safety First Real Drug Education for Teens curriculum, which they implemented in a number of schools in the US. And this curriculum focuses on the accurate and concrete information about drugs, benefits, risks, harms, and how they can mitigate any risks or harms. And it sees abstinence important strategy to reduce the harms that drugs can cause, but also recognizes that there never has been, never will be a drug-free society. And as such, complements messages of abstinence with information on how you can use drugs safer. And those who went through this curriculum, when they did their evaluation afterwards, the results were that these children thought more critically about drugs and the impact of drug policies. They were empowered with information to make healthier choices about drugs, possess personal knowledge and strategies to manage risks of drugs. And the evaluation also found, this was not the point of the curriculum itself, but it also found that those who participated in it overall reported increased knowledge about drugs, but decreased personal substance use at the same time. So it's important to look at where there is the evidence for drug education curriculums and awareness campaigns that are working, that are not stigmatizing, moving away from the just say no model, but informing parents, those who are concerned, politicians as parents themselves, to children, that these models of regulation and decriminalization won't just happen isolated from campaigns around drugs in general, and that there is a need to shift from a stigmatizing messaging around drugs to actual accurate information and using the evidence of what actually helps to help mitigate drugs and risks of drugs, but also for those who do not want to use drugs to be empowered to continue with that choice for themselves, and those who do use to have the access to the information they need to stay safe.
Thanks very much.